Okay.
All right, we good to go, Keith?
We are good to go.
All right, let's let these folks in and we'll get started. You good to go, Chef? Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cook for Health with Chef Alexa Joan. AARP is very glad that you're able to join us today in this wonderful cooking show that I believe we are in our 4th episode. And I got to tell you, folks, it is great to be with you all here on a Saturday afternoon. I see that we have some folks from across the state joining us. I am here at my home in Hamburg, New York, and I had the opportunity to get out for a walk and a bike ride today. And if you haven't already had the chance to do that, it's not that bad of a day. A few raindrops out there, but we put our raincoats on, and it really was a great walk today. So, folks, we're here to learn about some great recipes, and we are very pleased to have Chef Alexa Joan with us today. A few things for housekeeping. If you have a question, you have a couple options, really. You can type it right into the chat, and then I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll interrupt Chef when it looks like there's an opportunity to discuss. Or if you'd like to politely interrupt yourself, you're welcome to do that as well. We're getting pretty casual, and it's been a great conversation that folks have been able to have with us here with Chef. So enough from me. I will turn things over to Chef Alexa Joan. It's all you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, yeah, we've been doing quite a few of these, Randy and Keith. So thank you again for allowing me to be part of this series. Health is very important to me. I am a chef, and I know that feeding the body through food for health is very important. I know a lot of our communities right now are struggling with health because of COVID and chronic disease and things like that. And hopefully some of the recipes that I've been supplying these past episodes and the next, this episode and the final episode coming up will kind of, at least give you some creative ideas in terms of introducing new things to your diet on a more regular basis. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for joining me, taking time out on your Saturday. As Randy said, the weather here in Western New York is actually very mild for a winter. I went on a walk earlier, Randy, today, and we were just noting how mild the weather is. It's a little, creepy sometimes, I always say, because you never know what's in store next. So today I'm making something, food for the soul, more food for the soul. I am making a roast chicken, whole roast chicken. I am making brown rice and vegetable curry, all within an hour. So we're gonna get started right away. I have about a 3.5 pound chicken. This is actually an organic chicken from Wegmans. It was about $10, and it's gonna feed probably about 4 to 6 people. And maybe some leftovers. You never know, depending upon if you're serving it as a side or on a salad, or if it's your main entree. So I patted it dry with paper towels very well, because the dryness is going to ensure that I get a nice crisp skin, along with some olive oil and some seasoning. So I'm just going to take maybe about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of oil. And I'm going to drizzle that on. I'm going to take a lemon, because this week's seasoning is going to be lemon pepper. I like lemon, and I don't get to use it very often with my chicken. So I happen to pick up some lemon pepper seasoning, and it works. Now I have my salt. I'm using kosher salt. Remember, this is just going to be on the outside of the chicken. So depending upon how you eat your roasted chicken, you can generously season your chicken with salt and pepper if you're going to be taking the skin off. If you're not going to be taking the skin off, I would just be a little mindful about how much you're using. Lemon pepper seasoning. You can season your chicken with thyme, basil, oregano, crushed red pepper, chili powder, or chili garlic sauce. I'm going to add some thyme onto mine. I may need a little more oil. Maybe I didn't put enough on. Maybe I did. We're going to find out in just a few minutes. I have some dry thyme, whole thyme. And I have on my gloves because I don't want to do a lot of hand washing while I'm in my classes, but I'm simply going to massage my chicken. Make sure all those seasonings get on the chicken, under the chicken, on the thigh meat, on the wings, which are already folded over and under so it can sit nicely. And this oil and the dryness of the skin is going to help pack in and seal in the flavor. I'm going to take half of a lemon. Well, I'll take the whole lemon if it fits, and kind of stuff it right into that bird so we can get those citric juices going on. And I will probably finish it with another hit of the lemon pepper seasoning, just to be on the safe side. And I have my oven preheated at 425, because remember, we're going to do this in an hour. You can make a whole Sunday, Saturday, weekday dinner in an hour with a whole chicken. All right, just a little bit of pepper. And then I might have you follow me over to the oven. If you have any questions, let me know. All right, so my oven is already preheated. Putting it right into the center, and I'm going to leave it alone for the next hour. So it's 1:08. We're going to check it at exactly at 2 o'clock. It should be done because I have the temperature up a little high. All right, now we're going to make our brown rice. Brown rice will take anywhere from about 30 to 40 minutes, maybe 50, depending upon if it's long grain or short grain. And I'm going to make it using the pasta method. So I have a pot full of water with a bay leaf and half of a garlic clove, and I'm going to pour in my brown rice. Simple. I'm going to stir it. Once it comes to a boil, I'm going to turn it on low, and I'm going to cover it with a lid. And I'm going to set my timer for 40 minutes, and then it should be done after that. brown rice can be flavorful and can be cooked in a short amount of time. A lot of people say they don't like to eat brown rice because it doesn't have much flavor to it, but it's all in how you prepare it. And you don't need a lot of salt, especially if what you're putting on top of it is going to have seasonings and salt that it's been cooked in. You don't need to add that to your brown rice. Brown rice is healthier for you. It is a whole grain, so it's going to give you the necessary fiber that you need, and even just a little bit of protein, just a touch. But if you don't like brown rice and you know you're not supposed to be eating white rice all the time, try a wild rice. Wild rice is not a grain. It's actually a seed, and it's a seed of grass. And it's very fragrant, very flavorful. And it also takes maybe about 40 to 50 minutes, if not the full hour, to cook it. And typically on rice, you use a 2-to-1 ratio or 1.5-to-1 ratio in terms of water to grain. But when you do the pasta method, it's a little easier because you don't have to really think about it. Just fill your pot up with water, put the rice in, bring it to boil. You're going to be draining it and straining it. So it doesn't matter how much water you have in it.
Chef, we have some questions for you on the rice.
Oh, okay.
2 questions. I'll shoot them both at you.
All right.
What are your thoughts? Do you recommend rinsing the brown rice before cooking? And can I do the rice and chicken broth instead to get more flavor?
Yes and yes. So you can rinse your rice. I don't always do that. I probably should. If I were using white rice, I would definitely rinse it because the starch in the white rice will allow it to stick more and congeal more. But I always rinse my rice, whether I'm using the pasta method or whether I'm using the ratio method, just because I'm typically using my rice for more than just one day. So I don't want it to be clumpy. I want it to be grains. I want it to be individual grains. So that's why I always rinse my rice. If you find that your rice is clumpy, either one, you're cooking it too long with too much water, or you're not rinsing off the starch either beforehand or after it's cooked. And then the second question, Randy, was
chicken broth.
Oh, chicken broth. Oh yeah, you can absolutely use anything to cook your rice in. I would suggest, so you don't waste chicken broth, only because there's a cost associated with it, that you do the ratio method. If you're using brown rice, it's typically 1 to 2. So 1 cup rice, 2 cups water, roughly, maybe a little more. And then you can always add spices to it, aromatics. You could add a 1/2 or 1/4 of an onion in it, along with the garlic and the bay leaf, just to give it more of that aromatic flavor. You could add ginger into it, some grated ginger. If you wanted to add a little bit of thyme, oregano, and rosemary, just as it's getting ready to cook, absolutely do that, because that's when you want to start imparting flavor. The one thing about grains, which kind of goes against what I just said, is that in order for them to have flavor, you need to use salt in the water. The reason why I get away from using the salt when I'm making the rice is using the aromatics and the spices. But like things like potatoes, those need salt. Pasta, you need salt in your boiling water in order to, otherwise it's just going to taste like mush. And you don't want it to taste like mush. You want it to be flavorful. You want to layer all of your flavors. I know you hear that from me a lot, but layering flavor when you're cooking is very important. That's what chefs do in the kitchen. They make sure that every component that is being prepared is flavored appropriately, and all of those flavors blend and work well together. Long answer, but you get the gist. So I have prepared in my veggie curry pot is some coconut oil and olive oil. It's already kind of melted already, but I have about maybe 2 tablespoons of coconut oil because I'm going to be using coconut milk in this recipe along with vegetable stock and my coconut oil. And what else? And I'm going to be using spices like coriander, curry, garlic, onion, cumin, and I'm going to use a little bit of an African spice, which is a Berber spice. And then I'm going to kind of season it in terms of the sodium aspect, again, with soy sauce, low sodium, and some fish sauce. Okay, and let's go get to chopping some vegetables. So from our last class, which we made roasted red pepper sauce with the cauliflower steak, sauteed wilted greens, and a portobello mushroom, I have leftover cauliflower. So I'm gonna end up probably using maybe a cup of that because I'm not making a big batch of this. I'm making a small batch. But you can use, depending upon the size of your pot, that's kind of how you determine how much of each vegetables you want. If you have a 4-quart pot or a 6-quart pot and you have 4 vegetables, you know you can't use 4 cups of each vegetable. So you're going to use maybe about 2 cups of each vegetable or 3 cups of each vegetable. So when I cook, I don't use a recipe. I kind of go by ratio and, you know, just how things are going to pile up into something. Kind of. So I am going to make my flavor packet first. And I'm going to do that by using my food processor. And this is something that I learned from Absina Ethiopian food over in Westside Bazaar. This is something very simple, very easy that you can do. They use it all the time. You're going to use your food processor to chop your aromatics, your garlic and your ginger and your onion. And this process of chopping up the aromatics, it's simpler, it's easier, especially, you know, if you're in the kitchen and you're making a lot of different dishes at once that have, you know, the same basic aromatics. But it's also something where you can actually end up freezing your flavor packet so that you don't have to do it each time. You can just pull it right from the freezer and start working from it. So I'm going to take my onion and I'm just going to cut it in about 8 pieces. And I'm going to put that in there first. I'm going to take my ginger that's been peeled already. I'm going to use about, 2 inches maybe, 1.5 inches of ginger. This I'm going to cut up in a bit smaller pieces because ginger is tough and fibrous. So I don't want to, jam up my food processor. Throw that right in. I like ginger. The ginger, garlic, onion flavor is amazing, first of all. And second of all, just when you're thinking about your body and inflammation, ginger and garlic are 2 herbs that you really want to start utilizing more in your cooking, even turmeric. And if you use turmeric, a lot of people pronounce it differently. The one thing about using turmeric is that you have to make sure you add pepper, black pepper, into your cooking in order to help it to be beneficial for your body. Can you turn my rice down on low and put the top on, please? He's my cameraman and my sous chef. And put the timer on for 40 minutes.
I just wanted to tell you, we were just joined by a friend here. She gives you a little shout out. Yolanda Bostic Williams is with us.
Hello, Yolanda. How are you? Thank you for joining.
Hey, Lex, so happy to be here.
Thank you. See, that's what
good
I just got her
caught up. I told her what she got in the oven and right where we are. So she's ready to go.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Yes, we got our chicken roasting. We're making a little flavor packet for our veggie curry, 40 minutes, yeah. And we have some brown rice cooking. So yes, social media is amazing because it allows us to catch up with people that, we haven't talked to in a while or seen in a while. And Yolanda is one of those folks who's very special to me. We went to college together, so thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I wish you were cooking like this in our dorm rooms. I'm going to go on mute.
Yeah, I mean, I did the ramen noodles in the electric tea kettle back then.
Yeah, we all did.
We all did?
Yeah.
See, you never know. That was the beginning of my chef mind. You all helped me with that, among other things. So vegetable curry is amazing because it's almost like the kitchen sink recipe of food, right? You can literally put anything in it and it'll taste great because you have those wonderful warming spices. All right, so let's see what we can do here. So this is gonna be loud. Just gonna process it up. Make sure everything gets in there and chopped up. How long did that take? 5 minutes? I was running my mouth, so it took a little longer, and that's simple. And that you can just put right in the pot with the oil and fry it up, add your seasonings, and you've already got a jump start on your meal. All right, the next thing we need to do is cut up some vegetables. So I'm gonna clean my station from my aromatics. The other thing that's going in this dish are some chickpeas, which are from the can because we like to cook with ease. And that's going to be real simple to do. I drain the liquid from the chickpeas and then I just let them soak in water for a little while. And for my red pepper, I'm just making a large, simple dice. I'm not going to do a fine dice or brunoise or anything. I'm just going to simply make some cubes because I want to see that beautiful red color coming through the yellowish orange curry. So I'm gonna have some nice pieces. And this is kind of like if you go to a Thai restaurant or something and you get a curry, they have those nice big pieces of bell pepper and zucchini and green beans. They don't want to hide any of that flavor. They want you to know exactly where that flavor is coming from. Make sure you don't have any seeds in there because that could be very painful. I'm also going to be adding kale into this curry. Remember, kitchen sink, you know, it's literally anything. And sometimes when we make vegetable curries, we think you only can put like 1 or 2 things in there. No, we want to put everything in there because eating a rainbow is very important for heart health, for everything. Butternut squash. I've already cut some of it. But I just wanted to show you a little bit of how to cut a butternut squash. I cut off the top part. I cut off the bottom. So this is a bulb that contains the seeds. So I'm just gonna cut it kind of like I cut a melon, where I just go down the sides. Or I will show you the other way that you can do it, which for me is a little tougher to do. A potato peeler. But I like to actually get rid of some of that light yellow. So if you'll notice the difference, here's that bright orange, and this is a little more light orange because some of the peel is still attached to that, which is why I like to use the knife. So you can either do this several times with the potato peeler or just, you know, do your little strokes with the knife. Does anybody ever take the risk or take the chance of buying a whole butternut squash and actually cutting it yourself or even roasting it whole? Because it's, you know, it does make a difference. Sometimes that pre-packaged stuff that's already been pre-cut ends up being a little dry. So that's the other reason why sometimes I will just buy whole gourds or whole pumpkins and roast them. So the flavor is still present and the quality is still good.
Chef, you got me hooked after the class we did with the Harriet Tubman School.
Yeah.
I went out and I got a butternut squash, and what I liked about it is it was good not only the evening that I roasted it and ate it, but it was good for several days after.
Yes.
The flavor just really stuck.
Yes, yes. And that's, I mean, again, that's, you can't find that with I don't know, with the pre-cut butternut squash, I just don't feel that you have that same kind of longevity with the flavor and the freshness. But yes, I mean, you can stuff these, I'm just taking out the seeds. You can hold the seeds and roast them. They're a little smaller than regular gourds, but you could always do butternut squash roasted seeds just like you would a pumpkin. But yeah, I mean, squash, it's the season for it. If you're buying locally, you are helping sustain the economy, the local economy, by making sure that local farmers are paid for their produce, and then they can pay their workers and kind of keep their jobs, right? And keep their farms. So it's more than just food. You're making an actual statement when it comes to how you cook and how you shop.
So Nancy has a little tip. She likes to pierce the squash and nuke it for 5 minutes. After that, it's a little bit easier to cut for.
Absolutely, you can do that. I'm a little old school. We don't even have a microwave.
Ooh.
So we have a toaster oven, but we don't have a microwave. So yes, you can pierce it, you can nuke it. You can also use roasted squash in this recipe to make it a little easier to cut and cook. So instead, you would cut the squash in half, poke it with a knife, oil it, put it in the oven, and that way it will be easier to cut and peel. And it will also give a little more sweetness to the curry, because you'll find sometimes when you're making any type of curry, you need to add a bit of sweetener, because it's going to just lend more to the flavor of that spice. Yes, that's a wonderful tip. Thank you so much. All right. And I'm going to have lots of butternut squash left over for my freezer. Or I could make butternut squash muffins or butternut squash bread. A lot of possibilities. All right. Now I'm also going to add some carrots into my veggie curry, because this is what I have left over. You'd be surprised that it really doesn't take a lot of thinking to determine what you're going to cook, because we overbuy sometimes, just because we're so busy that we can't always cook the things that we think we're going to cook, or we have these grand ideas about what we're going to cook, but then we end up having 50,000 Zoom meetings a week. So we have a lot of produce left over. So at the end of the week, before garbage day, I just try and go through and say, hey, we still have, this broccoli in here, or this cauliflower, these carrots. What are we going to use with it? And then we find these kind of like kitchen sink recipes and just cook it up. And if we don't end up using it, then what we'll do is we'll actually just throw it in the freezer. Okay, so let's see. I'll cut the zucchini a little later, only because the zucchini literally will go in for just a couple minutes prior to everything being ready. All right, come on over to the stove. I'm going to take my flavor packet. I'm going to start with medium heat. I'm going to check my rice. My rice is still moving along. It's got about 30 more minutes. My chicken is fine. I'm not going to check it. It is 1:30. All right, so first I'm going to take, after this kind of heats up a little bit, you don't always have to start with hot oil, because we're not frying the onions. We kind of want to saute them and kind of get that flavor. Not sauteed, but like stewed. Like you want the flavor to grow for these aromatics. You don't want to shock the flavor. You want to just kind of, let it hang out a little bit. All right, so I'm putting all of that mixture in. So that was about 4 cloves of garlic. That was 1 onion, and about 1.5 inches of the ginger. And I'm gonna add a little bit of salt because curry does need a little bit of salt in order for it to do its thing. Can you give me a soup bowl out of there so that when I'm ready for this, we can present it? And what I want this to do is I want it to warm. I want those flavors to come out. All right. And as this is kind of warming up and all those aromatics are blooming, we're going to also bloom our spices. So I'm going to add, and blooming the spices simply means frying them or cooking them. When you are making soups and stews, if you only put your spices in at the end or while the liquid is simmering, you don't give your spices a full chance to show themselves or present themselves. So oftentimes you have to build the flavors in soups and stews. And you do that by blooming your spices in your oil along with your aromatics. So it gives it a chance to kind of like get comfortable and kind of chill out a little bit so that it can get ready and prepared to give you those awesome flavors that you're looking for in your soups. So I'm gonna double up my garlic with a little bit of granulated garlic. I don't do measurements. I do sight and I do taste. I know that I always put more than 1 or 2 teaspoons of spices in my things. I'll put it like that. If I have a 4 to 6 quart pot, I'm probably starting with a tablespoon of spices, depending upon what it is, for each spice that I'm using. Some spices, I know that if they're really hot or really pungent, I'm not going to use that much. A tip about curry. Curry grows, the flavor and the scent grows as it sits. So curry can be very overpowering if you use too much. But it can be very dull and muted if you don't use enough. So there is this kind of like medium, and it kind of goes by eyesight about what that flavor is that you're looking for. I'm going to add some cumin because I like the smokiness of cumin. I'm going to add some coriander. Coriander is a very subtle spice. It has a bit, sometimes not orange, but it has a very fragrant scent that goes well with cumin and curries and paprikas. And this is just a store-bought. This is actually Jamaican curry, but you can use any type of curry. Some are hotter than others, so you want to be mindful of that. And I am missing my thyme. I want to add thyme to this because thyme and curry are like a married couple. They go together and they always work well together. I'm sure they have their falling outs every once in a while. That was smoked paprika. And this is my Burberry spice. It's in a plastic bag because I get it by the pound from an Ethiopian store. It is very spicy and hot, so I don't want to add too much. And I have to go get my thyme. I'll be right back. Any other questions about spices or curries?
I don't see any. Yeah, we have another question about the recipe, if it'll be posted. So why don't you tell us what your website is again? I'll drop that in the chat.
So my website, and they should be up by tomorrow, all my recipes, if they're not already there. My website is www.alexajoan.com.
All right, so I just dropped that in the chat, folks. You should also take a look at following Chef Alexa Joan on Instagram, and her handle on Instagram is Chef Alexa Joan.
Yep, or by Alexa Joan. I have two.
All right.
By Alexa Joan kind of has everything on it. Chef Alexa Joan will lead you to By Alexa Joan too.
All right.
So Randy, if you're not following me, follow me there too.
I will. I'll have to do that other one. So I have a question for you about garlic. I just this year realized the difference in the quality of garlic that you can find out there in grocery stores. And I started buying it from a local farm, and the flavor is just simply night and day. Where do you get your garlic?
It depends. I get it all over. When it's in season, I will go to Wegmans, and if it's like purplish, you can tell that it like just came from a farm. If it's white, it's been in storage for a while, so that flavor is going to be dull. But I do go to farmers markets. I will go to Farmers and Artisans on Main Street, which is a year-round, like, farmers market. It's like right past Harlem. I will also go to Bidwell or, any of those markets. But now the one good thing about everything that's happening now and how people are recognizing how important food is to health, many of our grocers are actually looking for local sources or local distributions of produce. So Lexington Co-op is very good about making sure they source from local farmers. Where else? Yeah, I mean, that's where I go. Massachusetts Avenue Project, they actually have a farm, and they have some beautiful garlic. Urban Fruits and Veggies, which is an urban farm located on the east side, they have some amazing stuff. African Heritage Food Co-op has wonderful produce. So a lot of those places have some really great things.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so if you look at my pot, you'll see that my spices are blooming. They're getting nice and dark and cooked on in there, looking beautiful, and it's very fragrant. And I can tell that I might need a touch more curry, but I think I'm gonna keep it for now and see what happens. If I wanted to go the Thai route, Thai curry for this, I would have added like some lemongrass and probably some lime juice at the end. So I have 1 can of chickpeas going in my pot. I have about a cup of carrots. And I'm probably going to use, let's see, maybe about a cup of the butternut squash. Not all of it, just a cup of it. And then I'm going to add in my pepper. Oh, sorry if it's hard for you to hear me. I keep going back and forth to the counter because I don't have enough space next to me. All right, and I'm gonna go get my cauliflower. I'll be right back. So the cauliflower I kind of cut into kind of bite-sized pieces. And I'm gonna use about a cup and maybe a half of the cauliflower. Cauliflower is good because it absorbs flavor really well, but it maintains its bite to it. So it's al dente if you don't cook it, super long. So it's a good hearty vegetable to use. What else? And then we'll go back over and I'll cut up some zucchini and some green beans and some kale. So this is a vegetable stocked curry. It's gonna be more like a stew than a soup. All right, and then I'm going to add in my coconut milk. This is full fat coconut milk. This is Wegmans brand, it's organic. If you notice here, coconut fat. You can actually make whipped cream out of this. Let it just rise to the top and use all this, put it into a mixing bowl, add some sugar and whip away, and you can treat it just like whipped cream. And then what you have left after you get the cream out on the top is all the liquid. Now, this is different than the coconut milk that you're gonna find in the store for your, your cereal and things like that and your creamers. You don't want to use that. You can, but I don't think it has the same flavor. I think it's a very different flavor. I'm gonna get my stock. This is vegetable stock. I'm gonna use about 2 to 3 cups of the stock. And what I wanna do, I wanna make sure the vegetables are covered. So if they're not, what I'm gonna do is add a little bit of water. But I think, because remember, you have more vegetables to add to this. So I'm gonna bring this up to high. And I want that to come to a boil. And I'm gonna give a little more water, so just one moment. So doing it by eye, again, I just wanna come up far enough so that my vegetables are covered. But knowing I need to keep a little bit of room because I'm gonna add more vegetables. So I'm gonna stir this in, make sure everything gets under that water. I'm gonna add in a bay leaf because bay is amazing. Bay leaf is very underrated. A lot of people don't use it. But bay leaf is like life-changing. Okay. And that's another pot there, that my backup pot. That's my TV magic pot. That's bubbling away. So I made a pot of curry in advance because I knew I would not be able to have the finished product in time for the end of this class. So my chicken is roasting. The skin is starting to bubble and it's starting to brown on top. So we have about 15 more minutes or so on that. Our rice, you can see the rice is starting to plump away. So we'll check that in we'll check it in 5 minutes. Sometimes with the pasta method, it tends to cook a little faster. So you just need to watch it for a little bit. All right, so the other vegetables that we're gonna add to this are, again, you wanna think about the vegetables, one that you like, but you want to think about the color that you're adding to the dish. And you wanna make sure that you are adding vegetables that are good for you and healthy for you. And again, you can't go wrong with the rainbow. So we have white, we have orange, we have red, and we're gonna have green in this. You could also add some cabbage, which would be really good in the curry, but I'm gonna add zucchini, kale, and maybe some string beans. And for my produce, when I wash my produce, I wash it in water, I soak it, and then I add some vinegar to it. Some people add like baking soda or something like that to help dissolve the pesticides, but I just use the vinegar because I have it readily accessible to me. So I'm going to cut up the zucchini in quarters. And in about 5 minutes, I'm going to add the kale to my curry because this kale is the dinosaur kale, the Lusitano kale. So it's tougher than the curly kale, but it's not as tough as collard greens. So it does take a little while to break down, but you know, it's still nice and bright and hearty, and it's a dark green leafy vegetable, which is ideal and what we want. So I'm gonna do nice sized chunks for the curry, for the zucchini. Remember that we're gonna add right at the end. So I'm gonna put that in a bowl. And the other thing I'm gonna add at the end are just a few green beans, because that's gonna give you a nice fresh crunch to your curry. So not everything is soft. Texture is very important when it comes to cooking. Texture, sight, scent, hearing, all those are really, really important. You know, one of the reasons, and environment too. One of the reasons we don't like hospital food sometimes is because maybe it's all one color, or maybe it's all one texture. You don't have a crunch. But the other reason why we don't like hospital food is because we're in the hospital and it's usually not for something good. So, you know, having foods that kind of feed our soul, are foods that touch all of our senses. So I'm gonna have that ready to go. So in the last 5 minutes of cooking, I can add the zucchini and I can add the beans. And now I'm going to, and for this, so most kale you'll strip off of the stem, but this one I use some of the stem. I don't know why, because it's easy to cook. It's not very tough. There are a lot of nutrients in the stem of many of the dark leafy greens. So I don't always feel the need to cut it off. And sometimes, you know, maybe it's just laziness or efficiency. I won't say laziness, I'll say efficiency. And this has already been pre-washed. So I'm just cutting through it. This is the organic kale. So it was a little thinner than usual. Sometimes you'll get some monstrous pieces. All right, so before I set that up, I'm going to just clean my station just a little bit. Again, if there are any questions, let me know. And some of the salt substitutes are going to be really important. Salt is not a spice, so it's not something that you should add too generously to your food. So if you're trying to get the saltiness or the brininess, then focus on things that are salty or briny, that are not actually salt. So some of the briny things are some of the vinegars. And if you use some international vinegars, you'll find more brininess, like ume plum vinegar, which is an Asian plum that's been brined and kind of like, you know, set out for a long period of time. So it just, the flavor gets concentrated, and they also make a vinegar out of it. Adding that to some of your dishes will allow it to impart that saltiness without a lot of bad sodium. I mentioned already the soy sauce and the fish sauce, but there are also vegan alternatives that you can use. There's a vegan fish sauce. Worcestershire sauce is not vegan, but you can always add that as a bit of an extra kick of sodium. You can add miso. Miso is a paste. It's made from fermented soybeans. That's another way to not only impart sodium, but to impart flavor, because miso has a very distinct flavor to it, and it can intensify or it can strengthen the umami flavor for your foods. So those are some things that you can add. And then on the flip side, in terms of sugars, we don't want to add a lot of sugars to our food. So we want to make sure we find alternatives to sugar. And some of those alternatives are maple syrup or monk fruit or coconut sugar, or even date sugar, or even dates. Anything that have a natural sweetness are really, really good to add instead of just adding refined white sugar. Sometimes that just, it's not good for, you know, if you have diabetes, even if you have heart disease, and it contributes greatly to inflammation in your body. Some other ingredients that you can add in order to reduce inflammation or to assist with building flavor are your citrus juices. So your lemons, your oranges, your limes, things like that are gonna brighten up your dish and make it just, make it better, make it nicer. All right, so I'm gonna get ready to go back over to the stove so that I can check on my chicken, I can check on my rice, and I can add the kale to my dish. All right, so this is the pot that we started together, and it's almost ready to come to a boil. And all those beautiful vegetables are in there. So I'm gonna add some kale to this now, because the great thing about the curry is that it will only take maybe about 30 minutes to prepare. You want to make sure that the flavor is developed, and you want to make sure that your vegetables are tender. All right, now this pot, which you'll get to see in just a moment, is one that I already started a little earlier in the day. And this is what my curry is going to look like. That's beautiful. So I have the butternut squash, I have the carrots and the chickpeas. I'm going to add some kale in now because I didn't add it in at that time. I don't mind having, I like kale and I like the toughness of it. So for me, this is like perfect. So I'm going to add in this kale, and it's going to bring out that color along with a couple of green beans and some squash. It's 1:51, Randy. I'm almost right on time.
All right, looking good. What kind of bay leaves do you use? We got a question.
Honestly, I'll use any bay leaf. There's an international market where I will buy a lot of my spices from there. They have some really great and flavorful bay leaves. The biggest thing with any of the spices is that you don't want it to sit too long in your cabinet. The longer your spices sit, the older they're gonna get and the flavor is gonna go away. So if you're not seeing a difference with your bay leaf, or if your bay leaf is like a year old, throw it out. If it's 6 months old, throw it out. You're probably not getting any flavor from it. So, you know, that's definitely one. Bay leaf, granulated garlic, thyme, and smoked paprika and cumin are, I would say, my top 5 spices. I make sure that if I'm not buying them whole, that I make sure I rotate them, because they're just in a lot of my cooking. So I make sure that they're always fresh, and I'm always replenishing them.
The ones you use look quite large.
Yeah, so these are actually, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. So these are actually, it's a Laxmi brand. You can get at Wegmans or the international market, specifically like the Indian markets or the Super Bazaar. They carry the Laxmi brand, and it's in the Indian spices area at Wegmans. I don't know, I just like them. They're really, I don't know, they're like my go-to. One, they're easy to find, and I can usually find them in a large abundance or amount. So for my rice that's been cooking away, that's in its pasta water, I'll say. You see that the rice is already bloomed. And it's been about 35 minutes. It tastes wonderful. It's not salty. It just tastes like brown rice. So I like that flavor. If you were to add salt to this, I would add maybe just maybe a teaspoon, but add it after it starts boiling. You don't want to add it before. After it starts boiling, then you want to add in the salt, stir it up, and then put the top on it.
We have a little Wegmans envy from our audience in central New York, yeah.
You just have to come to Western New York. Simple. You're still in New York, so there would be no foul play there. Just come hang out with us for a little bit, virtually, socially distant, but Wegmans is pretty awesome. But I'm sure you have great international stores in Central New York. I mean, though, hopefully you can also order online. That's another great place to get some of those things. So I'm going to take you over to my messy sink so that I can show you how to drain your rice. See, this is the stuff you don't see on those fancy shows, is the messy sinks. So I'm just going to tip this over into my colander. I'm going to rinse it. Get all the starch out so the water runs clear, and I'm going to set it to the side. Now I'm going to check on my chicken. Which should be just about done. Woo, it's beautiful. Let's see. I think it might need a couple more minutes. I kind of check that by seeing if the leg moves freely. So we may have to pop her back in the oven, but I'm also using my thermometer. The best way to test if your meat is done, have a digital thermometer. They're under $20 now. You can easily replace the batteries. They have instructions on it as to what the temperature for your specific meat should be, and kind of understand how you should temp your meat. So with chickens and things like that, and things with bones, you want to check it at a couple different places, because one place may be done before the other. Dark meat is typically done sooner than the white meat, the breast. And the thigh still it's dark meat, so it's a little brown. So some people may say, well, that's not cooked. There's still a little pink in there. It's like, well, that's not really pink. That's the dark meat. Whereas with the breast, if there's pink in there, then, you know, depending upon the type of chicken, sometimes it's not fully cooked. So you want to check by the bone, and you want it to be at least 165. So mine is 185 directly in the thigh meat. And in the breast, I want to check it a little close to the bone, but not too close to the bone. We're actually at 145. So the chicken needs a little bit more time. And a great thing about dark meat, it really doesn't overcook. It takes a lot to dry out dark meat. So the time is 1:57. I'm actually on par because we started about 1:08 with the chicken in the oven. So it needs about 10 more minutes to come up to temp. So don't follow me on that one. So I'm gonna pop it back in the oven. And then I'm gonna get my curry and my rice and a ladle. So maybe the curry is what you're making right before you, as you're preparing for your Sunday meal. So you have your chicken in the oven, and then you don't have to worry about your chicken for Sunday. You can just pull it out of the refrigerator, heat it up, make your vegetables. You're all set. You have a little bit of rice left over. If you want to incorporate your vegetable curry into your Sunday dinner, you can. But all within an hour, we have made brown rice, which is looking amazing. And we have our vegetable curry, which smells so good. A little bit of broth. It has chickpeas, onion, garlic, bell pepper, cauliflower. I think I'm missing something. Carrots, butternut squash, zucchini. What am I missing? I missed something. And then either during cooking or simply just for garnish, we can add a little bit of basil leaves right to our curry. Basil is a little bit in the mint family. but basil surprisingly goes really well with ginger and garlic. People think of basil when they're thinking about Italian food, but basil is so versatile. It works with so many different cuisines, and it allows you to, to spice up something in a different way. So this is our vegetable curry. Our chicken is still in the oven. I got a little extra broth there. But here you have in one dish, in one pot, you have a rainbow of vegetables. You have good fiber. You have some protein with the chickpeas. And you have something that's going to fill you up. Not only your body and your stomach and satiate you in that form, but it's also just going to make you feel good. And sometimes during these days, we're looking for food to comfort us. So, sometimes we eat the wrong foods. Well, let's eat the right foods and have them comfort us, comfort our mind, our body, and our soul. And make sure you make vegetables the star of your plate whenever you're cooking. That's what I have today.
Chef, that was wonderful. My mouth is watering. I knew that would happen. I brought an apple to my desk just so that I would have something to eat because I knew I was getting hungry. There's a question that was a question of my own. Olga wants to know a little bit more about that sweet food thermometer you were using. Where'd you get that? What's the brand? Where can we find it?
So this one is actually from Amazon. They're all pretty similar now, whereas they all contain a thermometer stick. They all are compact. They're all digital. They have on-off buttons. You can do Celsius and Fahrenheit. You can do a hold, max, min time. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name, but my partner there, Idris Waja, typed it in the chat. But they're amazing. I buy them all the time. Sometimes I buy them in packs of 4s because I have kids in the house, and sometimes they're just a little reckless with things. But this will save your life. You can keep it in a jacket. You can put it on your refrigerator. You can put it on the hood of your stove, and you'll always have a thermometer at hand. When cooking, temperature is vital because that can be the difference between somebody getting sick and somebody enjoying a really good meal. If your food is not cooked to temperature, that's horrible. Especially poultry, because we know salmonella and other viruses can live on some of our foods. Even when you're reheating foods, it's good to temp it, especially soups and things like that. And that's part of the reason why I don't have a microwave. So on my stove, I will typically, like for example, this curry, I'll put it in a pot. I'll add a touch of water just in case any of the water evaporated or got lost somehow. And then I'll put it on maybe about medium high so it can start warming up. But you always want to bring your soup or your stews to a boil when you're reheating it, because that's going to kill anything that could have possibly been living on it. And then you want to temp it. You want to temp it until it's 165 to make sure that it's the perfect temperature. So that, again, for certain that, that stuff is going to be dead if it even does exist in your food anywhere. And if you have meat in your soup or your stew and, you're ready to temp it to make sure that's the right temperature, put your thermometer in the meat or, in the protein, even if it's fish, to make sure that is at the appropriate temperature. Because many times your liquid can come to the right temperature before your protein that's included in your soups or your stews.
So somebody was asking when's the next time we're going to be able to see a chef, and we have a class scheduled for Tuesday the 15th at 6:00.
Yep.
So
and that's our last class.
Yeah, that is our last class of 2020, and we'll see what we can schedule up for next year, what we can cook up with you.
What we can cook up. I like the sounds of that.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us. Chef, thank you again for sharing your kitchen, your kindness, and your expertise with us. Thank you to your cameraman, who always does a wonderful job. Folks, enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and happy holidays if we don't see you.
Thank you. And if you are looking for any of the previous classes, they are on my YouTube channel at Eat Off Art. That's EATOFFART. Yeah, we've had some fun together, haven't we, Randy?
We sure have.
I thank you all for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you. Please spread the word, and please let everybody know about what AARP is doing for our communities and what they're doing for our health, and how they're doing some really great seminars, some conferences. So if you are not a member of AARP, I urge you to sign up with AARP. You won't be disappointed with the information you find.
Thank you, Chef. So long, folks.
Take care. See you, yo.
Bye, babe. Mwah.
Loved it.
Thank you very much.